Hello YouTube, this is Neon. This is going to be part 6 of my talk, Coping with Mental Illness. I would tell everyone who has mental illness to know that you have something to contribute to the world. And while your healing from your mental illness is important, focusing on other people and helping other people can be a tool to help cope with mental illness, okay? You have something to contribute. You may be able to help people who are elderly mow their lawn, or you may resort to physical labor. You may have computer skills where you can help someone there, particularly if you're like me. You don't have the ability to really work and interact with people. You may be able to contribute with skills that you have on a voluntary basis. That will help in some ways to cope with your mental illness. I really took that to the extreme. I do my tithes and offerings. I would knit and crochet and do fundraisers for a particular community center. I would give stuff away. I would knit for knitted caps for the military. I really love the idea that doing something every day to help someone else, getting nothing back in return from them. The whole process of doing something for someone else and expecting maybe just a little respect and a thank you back in return has been hard for me and humbling. But some of the ways that I've done that in terms of the giving, not in terms of me disciplining myself and accepting that I'm not going to get anything back in return. Thirsty! I'm thirsty! Ooh. Now maybe you don't like me drinking water, but I got to drink because I'm thirsty. And I like drinking water when I'm thirsty. So when I've had money, I like soda anyway. I'm fine with tap water, but I would buy bottled water as well as sodas, canned sodas, and I would save my recyclables. Every day I knew I was going to drink water. Every day I knew I was going to have at least one soda. Diet. My favorite is Diet Pepsi. I think we're allowed to say what our favorite... Anyway. And so I would set those recyclables aside. The soda cans I would rinse out, and I would get all the water out of them, so I never had a problem with gnats. And the water bottles, I would put the cap on them. And I would save those, and when I had 30, 40, 50 of those saved up, I would give those to neighbors, or I would give those to people who were digging in the dumpster. I can see the dumpster from my bedroom. And that was a way that I could give to someone else every day. Knitting, sometimes I'd burn out on knitting. There's one community center that I knitted over 200 things for. Baby booties, baby slippers, Afghans, coasters, shawls, well, at least one shawl, hats, scarves, and raised several $100s for them. Again, I gave them all the money. It wasn't like consignment where they get half and I get half. I gave them all the money. But sometimes I burned out. And sometimes I realized that there's limits to this. This is not going to cure mental illness. And I had to learn that. I was tithing and making offerings. I'm like, I'm still depressed. This isn't cutting it. I knew it was helping. I did know that. But it wasn't doing enough, and I was still depressed, and I was still struggling. And I was like, I'll give more money. And it became pretty apparent that I couldn't give any more money. I've got to eat. I got bills. And I do have to take care of myself. And I'm very proud of the fact that I give 10% and above 10%. So I found that giving has its limits in terms of how much it will help a person to cope. And that it's not necessarily going to solve all of my issues with respect to my mental health, nor is it going to make coping just a breeze. But it has been incredibly helpful. So I recommend people giving every day. Another way that I give, but it's not every day, like I said. I stopped trying to make myself give every single day. Most days I do. But I'm registered as a member on the Spanish English forum for wordreference.com. And I'm a senior member now. That and about $7 will buy you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Water. I don't know how much coffee costs at Starbucks because I'm poor. Poor people don't go to Starbucks. And I go there and people will put questions on the forum and I try to answer at least a question every day. I don't always do it. And I'm okay with not giving every day now. But it is a good habit. If you can give every day to help someone else, receiving nothing in return, it's a good habit to get into. Okay? But there's limits. If you tire out, if you're exhausted, give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. And be okay with not helping someone. But don't throw it out. You know what I mean? Don't say, well, I'm tired of giving, I'm never going to give again. Don't go to that extreme. Take a break. If you don't want to do something for charity for a month, don't do it for a month. For a year, don't do it for a year. Don't let me define for you or someone else define for you. But I would recommend not building that slowly into your life of doing something to help others, and you decide what you can do. It should be fun. People cannot put demands on you. I did a lot of free labor and sometimes I was mistreated. I used to have to get food from food distributions because SSI, you can't eat on SSI. And they pulled volunteers from the people that were able-bodied and who were there to get food. Because I was not there to steal or to take, and I was there to work, some of us volunteers who are the more honorable ones, we would be doing most of the work. Sometimes we would get less food than if we just stayed in line because other people, some of the volunteers who were volunteering they work, would be taking stuff, and so more burden would be placed on us. And sometimes during the summer when we were volunteering, they wouldn't even give us water. So nobody can force you or enslave you. If you're being helpful to someone and you're being mistreated, you can say, hey, I'm not going to help you anymore, and do something else. And be willing to continue to move on. Continue to move on. If you're not being treated well. This is not saying you have to volunteer, and whoever you volunteer for, you must maintain that commitment, and that's sick, right? And no matter how they treat you, you continue to volunteer. That's sick. If someone is going to let you volunteer and they're going to use you, and this has happened to me, I ultimately, one way or another, would move on. So there's limits, and we want to do everything in balance. As I said before, I'll do a dream list in the future because I recommended in part 5. Yeah, in part 5. Was it part 5? Was it part 5 or was it? It was part 5. I recommended to get a dream for your life. And there's many books on that. I recommend it being written down. I recommend it being put somewhere where you can see it every day. I do have that. I have it above my desk. I don't read it every day. Once in a while, once in a blue moon, I will look at it and scan over it, but it's there, and I can see it, and it's in my peripheral vision. I used to leave it in my restroom. Right now, y'all looking at me from my mirror cabinet. I got the mirror cabinet open, closed, opened. So anyway, I used to put it on my restroom wall right here by the mirror cabinet. And sometimes if I had someone over, they would actually come up and ask me, oh, I saw that dream list, and that's not for other people, because there's a lot of people through the crab theory that will try to steal your dream, and I don't necessarily want everyone knowing what my dream is. But do that. Figure out how to write down your dream. Don't limit it by money. Okay, it probably should require you to have more money than you have now. Okay, it should be bigger than your ability or your resources now. And you can either get a book on that, or you can wait till my video comes out, and in which I give my suggestion on how to write down a dream. Alright, so that's good. People who are mental, there's a stereotype that I wanted to throw out there, that people who are mentally ill are abusive. And I just want to say that studies and statistics and professionals know that that's not true. And that people who are mentally ill, we fall prey and we are victimized by people who are not mentally ill much more much more often than we. I'm doing this to the side because my cup has a little label on it, and I don't know if that can be shown on YouTube, so that's why I'm drinking my water like this. It feels and looks weird, I know. But we are much more likely to be abused and victimized by people who do not have mental illness than we are to abuse people who do have mental illness. And I really feel like that needs to be mentioned. Lastly, I'm going to say that the history of abuse against people with mental illness is horrifying. Up until, I believe, the 70s, we could be institutionalized against our will and indefinitely. Locked away as prisoners against our will. The history is replete with violence, being tied down, being drugged, forced lobotomies, rape, being worked to death, being sometimes outright murdered, neglect, being drugged. Add in Dr. Mengele and Hitler in terms of the ways we've been treated. It's just in horrifying ways, okay? And the judgmentalism against and the bigotry against people with mental illness is alive, still alive today. I thank God and I bless you beautiful people, women and men, who over the years, decades, and centuries have fought for our rights so that we could not be treated like this, so that we could not be locked away when we've committed no crime other than making people uncomfortable with our mental illness. We love you and we bless God for you. And we thank you for all of your work. People like Dr. Rosenhall, we thank all of you beautiful, wonderful women and men who have fought for us, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And one day I saw an interview about someone who was quadriplegic, and he talks about people who think they have a disability and how he was able to do all these great things. And when he talked about people who think they have a disability, I was wondering, is he intimating people with mental illness? Because people with paraplegia or quadriplegia, because their disability is so pronounced and so visible and is perceived to be so undeniably real, a lot of times they can be snobbish towards people with mental illness. Because our disability, it's perceived to be not real. It's perceived to be a weak-minded person who just creates an imaginary illness that does not exist. And so they can be very snobbish. The guy who I dated who was paraplegic, he actually had a degree in psychology. So he did take my disability almost as seriously as his own disability, okay? And was much more respectful overall than some other people who have much more perceived to be real disabilities. But there can be a lot of snobbishness, and I'm going to do a video on this, even towards me. Before I was on SSI, I was such a freaking snob towards people on SSI. I felt they were all losers. And now here I am on SSI. I've been on SSI for 12, 13 years, and I've experienced so much snobbery, so much discrimination and bigotry, and I've really received what I've dished out. And it's wrong. It's wrong either way, you know. And if people want to say, well, I'm good, I'm glad you got what you dished out, it's not right. It's not right either way. I do regret it, but I guess this goes back to just taking your mental illness seriously. You know, it's real and it exists. And speaking to people who may believe, like me, that it's not necessarily curable, but that you can thrive with it. These are the folks that I'm really appealing to. So that's going to conclude this talk on how I cope with my mental illness. It went to 6 parts. I thought it was going to be done in 3 parts, but it's a blessing. I'm through, and I can talk about other stuff. My channel will have all kinds of stuff that I like to talk about, and some of those will touch on my mental illness, but they're not necessarily going to deal with mental illness. I wish you the best, particularly my beautiful brothers and sisters who are suffering from mental illness. If you like my video, like, subscribe, share, comment commercials, recommend my video. Do one or more of those things. Thank you. Best wishes.